Hi, it's Dr. Parikh. It is exciting. We're talking about how to start moving from a literature review to a research proposal. And I realized I don't have any great single documents to show you with that. There is an outline for each section, but I wanted to just kind of talk about the paper as a whole. So I'm actually showing you the revision plan template because that's going to talk about each section of your paper. And I'll talk not necessarily in order. I'm going to talk not necessarily in order of how you're going to do it, but in order of what's going to change, just to make sure that I hit everything in the paper. So the abstract is going to change significantly. It's the last thing you're going to change. Just like it was the last section you wrote, it's going to be the last section you revise, because you want to make sure that you know exactly what's going on before you try to say what's changing. So the abstract now is going to be a snapshot of your research proposal. So instead of emphasizing your thesis, you're going to emphasize your research question or hypothesis. As a reminder, the difference between those, a research question is kind of broad, like, is there a difference between how men and women respond to this treatment? A hypothesis is making a direction claim. So you are predicting, you are hypothesizing that men will respond more positively or will get a greater effect from this intervention than women will. So that's going to be more the focus. That's what you're kind of building up to in the first couple sentences of your abstract. And you're going to have information about things like your participants, your measures. You're going to, instead of talking about limitations of your lit review, you're going to talk about actual limitations of the articles or of the study that you are designing. Your roadmap paragraph, again, is going to adjust because instead of a thesis, you're going to, you're still going to include your thesis. You're still going to have a thesis for that introduction section, but you're also going to mention the purpose of your paper as being related to exploring this research question. Your introduction, the first few sections are not going to change a ton because hopefully you started thinking about your research question early enough that you've already kind of built an introduction that leads up to that question. I may give you some feedback to change a few things to better fit the research question you're building toward, because now you really are funneling. You're going toward something down at the bottom, a research question. You will add in a paragraph, the present study, and this is one of the first things that you're going to write for the new section. So you're going to write the present study, which is going to sort of, again, repeat the main themes that kind of the conclusion, the selling point so far, and talk about how there's this gap in the literature. And you're going to then talk about how this proposed study can fill that gap, can contribute to the literature. And you will end the present study with your hypothesis. So this is a brand new paragraph that you're going to write to fit. You're going to have a heading in it, just like the theme headings. It's going to be part of what is now called, instead of the literature review, it's now called the introduction. Next, we have some new sections. You have your methods section, which you're going to write. You have your results. So those are completely new. I'll talk about those elsewhere. And then in the discussion section, you're going to have almost a completely rewritten section. So the introduction stays mostly the same, but the discussion, you scrap almost everything from the first one. Again, it's really good to not get too attached to anything when you're a writer, especially for this class. So your summary paragraph, you still have you still have most of the same sections, but instead of, they're all different because they're all, instead of being related to this broad body of literature, they're related to your study. And so there's an outline for an updated discussion section, and it's going to walk you through exactly what needs to happen for each paragraph. You add a new paragraph, which is integration, where you're saying, okay, what could these, if my hypothesis is supported, or if I find this in my research question, what could it mean? How could it fit with the rest of the literature? And this section is tough. You're going to really stretch to write this section. But you've had a lot of experience now. You've written a lot of your paper and stretched a lot already. So this is kind of the final big stretch. By now, it should be reasonably easy for you to write limitations, professional applications, and future research. It's, and you may have, for example, professional applications that are similar to what you talked about in an earlier, in your first literature review draft. So you may, if it's close enough to your research question, you don't have to change it just to change it. But just like before I said, it needs to be specific to the things you're reviewing in your paper. This time, it needs to be specific to your study. It needs to be something that would come out of a finding. Now, this gets tricky because your finding is completely hypothetical, and you're acknowledging that. So you have a lot of, if the finding is supported, if men do receive greater benefit from treatment than women. And in the outline, I give some examples of that language. Your conclusion is also going to be updated because you need to refocus it on this as the conclusion for a research proposal. So instead of just sort of giving some information, you actually have something you're suggesting to be done, and you need to acknowledge that. Your reference page, that's likely going to stay, you should get at least one edition, because in your measure, you're going to find the original article for the measure that you're suggesting. Citations, you're going to cite that new measure. You're going to change some of the places, like in the discussion section, you may not have very many citations anymore, whereas before your limitations subsection definitely had citations. But now it may not, because now it's all going to revolve around your study. APA style is still going to have the same things. Comments, blah, blah, blah. So your paper is going, it's not like writing a second paper. It's like, for this class, it's like you write 1.5 papers, because you're mostly adding some new sections, and those sections require thought, but they're very much fill in the blank. As long as you're paying attention and giving good attention to detail, being conscientious, and using some scientific thinking, it's not too bad. But you do need to understand you're going to rewrite some sections. As long as you go in knowing that, you should be okay. Looking forward to reading and seeing how your paper grows. It's really exciting to see students feel more and more like a scientist as they go also, because you're going from reviewing research to talking about how you could actually contribute to the literature, which is so exciting to realize how easy it actually is to participate in the scientific process. Thanks. Bye.